still following the breaking news story this hour. The New York Times reporting it has obtained a copy of a confidential memo written by the president's legal team. The 20-page memo, extensive as you can tell here, is their response to Mueller's request to interview the president on questions related to alleged obstruction and collusion. Trump's attorneys take the position that while the president has cooperated fully by providing documents, he cannot be compelled to testify, and that he could, if he wished, shut down the investigation. For more, let's bring in Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe, co-author of the new book, To End a Presidency, The Power of Impeachment. Sir, Lawrence, thanks for being with us, and we're going to get to that topic, but as you know, we have the 20-page memo to get to. Broadly speaking, as you've looked through it, sir, what is your assessment? And if the arguments that you see in it regarding obstruction of justice, as well as the subpoena to be interviewed by the Mueller team, if that makes it to the Supreme Court, since you have addressed the Supreme Court dozens of times here, what would happen?
Well, first of all, while I was waiting in the green room, I read the entirety of that 20-page memo. There wasn't nearly as much substance as there was verbiage. And I agree with every word of what Charlie Savage said about that memo. His analysis was spot on. It's very clear that the memo makes arguments that are so over the top that even a conservative Supreme Court would be overwhelmingly unlikely to reject them, from the technical arguments that completely ignore the Sarbanes-Oxley change in the obstruction statute to the overarching arguments about the president being incapable of violating laws about the proceeding of criminal cases and about obstruction of justice. It's all really nonsense. In fact, the current Chief Justice, John Roberts, a former student of mine, has had as his great hero Justice Robert Jackson, who once said in an important opinion, the president is commander-in-chief of the military. He is not commander-in-chief of the country. He is under the law. And what it means to be under the law, as Barbara McQuaid pointed out, is that even though he has very broad powers, like the power to appoint judges if he wants, if he is bribed to appoint a particular judge, he can be removed for that bribery being a clearly impeachable offense. The whole memo is written kind of on the strange premise that we're talking about indicting a sitting president. It doesn't look like that's what is in Robert Mueller's playbook. What is in his playbook is issuing a subpoena to a sitting president in aid of getting at the truth. And the Nixon case establishes that you can issue a subpoena to a sitting president to make him turn over tapes. The Clinton case makes clear that you can make a sitting president testify, even in a civil case. It's much more important that he should be required to testify in a criminal context where those in his immediate circle are being gradually indicted and subjected to investigation for serious crimes involving potential collusion with a foreign adversary in order to win the office of the presidency. It's really clear that the reasoning in this memo is so over the top that whatever credible arguments they might otherwise have had kind of go by the wayside, like the 13th chime of a clock, that makes you doubt the first 12. This memorandum is legally shabby. It wouldn't pass muster in even an introductory course in constitutional law. And I'm really concerned that the president, of all people, ought to have better lawyers willing to represent him. It's not something that the lawyers I know would be eager to do, but he must be able to find some conservative lawyers who can make a decent legal argument. So far, we haven't seen that.
Well, and Lawrence, Barbara McQuaid, who you certainly give an A to, and you've not only taught Supreme Court justices, you also taught Nick Ackerman in the last segment said, actually Lawrence was also my professor. And he said, make sure to ask.
I just learned that the other night. I was proud.
Yeah, and he is too. And so what he asked he wanted me to ask you, Lawrence, was the issue of corruption, right? These laws may be in place. The establishment of obstruction of justice, the issue of executive privilege, but not when you add in the issue of corruption. He really wanted to underline that.
I think he's very right. I mean, the point is